Shall we begin?
Turn this down, Bob. Far away.
9 to noon.
And that's a fact.
Just listen. Just listen.
What in the ham fat is going on with you guys?
Good morning. It's a beautiful Wednesday. It's a beautiful Wednesday in the neighborhood. The neighborhood being FM 100.3 KFAN. This is 9 to noon. I'm Paul Allen. Eric Nordquist is Matt producer, and we are very happy to begin with Dane Moore, Elite NBA Mind, at Dane Moore NBA via the tweet machine, and the Dane Moore NBA podcast is fantastic. You can learn more about that via Dane's Twitter. And here he is, Dane. Paul Allen, how have you been?
What's up, PA? We're back. No off season.
What's the recalibration and or decompression of like personal life like when you put in the time you put in through the regular season, then those 3 rounds in the NBA playoffs? It's there's a certain degree of peace associated with closure, but it's still a transition, right?
Oh, absolutely. Well, it's just interesting. It's smart, honestly, how the WNBA or NBA and WNBA have just kind of turned this into, a 12-month cycle pretty much with just stuff. I mean, or a week after the NBA finals and it's the draft. And then next week we got the start of free agency. And I mean, in the NBA world, free agency trades, all this stuff, I think a lot of people like it more than the games, So we keep kind of rolling with this stuff. And Summer League's in 2 weeks, So it keeps moving.
Do you go to Vegas for Summer League?
I do. Yep. Always just go roast there in the 115-degree heat and watch some hoops. But I'm looking forward to it. We'll see if they got any new players from this draft tonight.
Yeah, very sweet. And on that, and you probably knew this because you're so plugged into the program, but Chris Finch, 9 to noon yesterday, said Chris Hines is going to be coaching the Summer League team. Is that of any surprise, or what an opportunity for the young man?
Yeah, man. T. Hines has been, huge there, and him and Ant are super tight, and that's just been, he's played a really important role kind of in the raising of Anthony Edwards, and kind of has his background in player development stuff, right? Just kind of one-on-one working with guys. But Finch has done a really good job of kind of letting a different one of the back of the bench assistants take the Summer League job. Max Lefevre did it last year, and so yeah, it's always funny to see them kind of get in front of the microphone or, be making the play calls there at the games, and after, just knowing them on background mostly. So I'm excited for him and for all this stuff. What
did you think of the 4-year extension for Finchy, and just overall now that the decompression has taken place, and you've thought about the way things were orchestrated last year, a playoff team 3 consecutive years with Chris. What do you like about overall his coaching style?
I think what I like most about his coaching style is he remains the coach every year, and we have stability in this organization. And, obviously there's been a lot of turnover at the coaching position, but I just think particularly in Minnesota, with how disconnected a lot of NBA players are from what Minnesota is, what Minneapolis is, I think there's a ton of value in having a coach that understands the area, actually lives there, can kind of embrace it and show you, what the culture is, and that this is a place that maybe you want to be in. As a player, sign a contract extension yourself and raise your family here. Like, that stuff's been missing pretty much, since Flip, was 20 years ago was fired. So I think that part's big here, and And Fitch has really embraced living in Minnesota, being part of the community. That stuff matters, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Now, inadvertently, you mentioned WNBA. Are you following it at all? Like, did you watch the Commissioner's Cup last night? Because I watched every minute.
I actually didn't get the chance to watch it last night. It's always, now I'm kind of like cramming on the NBA draft, and I always feel bad I don't get in enough of this. Normally, I pop into the WNBA for the playoffs, and that's about it. How'd it go?
Well, I'm the lemming. I mean, it's like I followed it from afar. I watched Caitlin Clark in the NCAA tournament. I followed her into the WNBA. I'm watching Fever Sky. I'm hearing Magic say Reese, Clark, Reese is Bird, Johnson, Bird. And I'm kind of feeling that vibe with the authenticity of disdain might be strong, but competitive nature those two have. I'm watching the Liberty with Brianna Stewart and Ionescu, who's WNBA immortality. I've watched a lot of Lynx games. I'm really into it, man. I've really gotten bit by it this year. And quite honestly, the Minnesota Lynx, I'm not going to say they should be favored to win the WNBA championship, but they should be top three. Certainly top 2, 3, maybe 4. Their perimeter defense is fantastic. This lady, Bridget Carlton, just hit a bunch of threes last night. Super key. Nafisa Collier dominated when needed to dominate. And their point guard, Courtney Williams, is super slithery. It's a very fun watch.
I got to lock in, man. It's always hard. It's hard to, kind of prioritize basketball 12 months a year, but I do always enjoy it when I get into it to the playoffs. So good sales pitch.
I got you. Round 1 of the NBA draft is tonight. What do you do during the draft and up to the Wolves pick at 27?
Yeah, so we're all over at Target Center, myself and, like Krasinski and Chris and Jason, the other reporters, and Britt. And so honestly, we just gotta do the same thing everybody else is. We're just sort of watching the draft in the media room and, texting people and that sort of thing. And then afterwards, we'll do a media availability with Tim Connolly and discuss whatever happens in the draft tonight, but also probably ask some questions about this offseason in general, because I'm really feeling like an interplay between what they do at 27 and 37 and how that kind of relates to free agencies that they have, and Kyle Anderson, Monte Morris, Jordan McLaughlin. It kind of feels like who they draft here will impact a little bit of those free agencies, which will impact the rotation next season.
At Dane Moore, at Dane Moore NBA via Twitter, Dane Moore NBA podcast. Learn more about that there and listen to it there. Are you feeling a trade, a drafted point guard, or something else this evening?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's the possibility, and we've seen this in the pattern of behavior of this group, to trade up. If there is maybe a player kind of falling down. Leonard Miller last season probably had a kind of like a late lottery grade, and when he was available at 33, the Wolves jumped to move up to get there. And Leonard is a 19-year-old upside pick, right? And I think they took that pick with Josh Minot, or a similar type of pick 2 years ago with Josh Minot. So I think if it's some guy that they've maybe had a lottery even top 10 grade on throughout the season, this feels like a draft that somebody, normally you wouldn't be like, oh, one of our top 10 guys could be there at 27 or 22, but I could see them moving up in that sort of way to get there. I know PA talked to you yesterday a little bit about point guard. I'm just curious about feasibility of a rookie point guard being able to come in and play right away next season, particularly if the front line of defense is 37-year-old Mike Conley. I think you probably need another guy in there behind him.
Well, do you expect second-year UCLA guard Jalen Clark to help much next season?
I mean, I don't know. I don't think anybody knows. I don't think they know.
Right.
I've noticed, just like anecdotally being around him, he's certainly put on some muscle weight, but he's not. I don't think he will be a point guard at all. He's going to be more your bulldog Josh Okogie type, from a couple of years ago. That's kind of
right.
what I envision for him. And, he's coming off of an Achilles. He's got questions surrounding his shot. It's kind of one of those things where if he can maybe earn his way into the rotation, if he earns his way into the rotation, it'll be with defense and from there. But I don't know, man. I'm not sure this team can really afford another non-shooter in its rotation, unfortunately.
Love that point. And we'll hit on some of these college kids soon. But to first, as you kind of mentioned, Finch said yesterday 9 to noon, point guard is the offseason A topic. And when Chris says things like that, he's always been honest, frontal, and open, so I have no reason to believe it's not. Are there any free agents out there you like? Let's start here. Should they re-sign Monte Morris?
I think Monte Morris, yes, because we have to remember here, without getting too nerdy with it, but from a salary cap perspective, if they don't re-sign Monte Morris or Kyle Anderson or Jordan McLaughlin, the only other free agents they can get are minimum contract players. So basically, you got to ask yourself, is Monte Morris better than a minimum contract point guard? And if the answer is that's yes, then I don't know. That's kind of it, So I don't think Monte blew any of us away after the deadline last season, but he's coming back from an injury. He was still kind of getting back into shape. I think Monte Morris is probably the best they could do for a backup point guard next season. Now the question is, does Monte want to be here?
Right.
Will Glenn or Mark or Alex, whoever's playing the bill, are they cool with paying Monte Morris when that's going to come with a heavy luxury tax payment? But if you want to talk about who is most likely to be the best backup point guard for this season, I don't know why Monte Morris isn't ahead of any of these guys in the draft, and certainly ahead of free agents who would be minimum contract guys.
And with this one, I think I know what the answer is, but I still want to pose it to you. Chris was with Kyle Lowry in Toronto. All right, Kyle's like 38 and seems forever paunchy. And any interest there?
Yeah, no, sure. I think that's what we're talking about with the minimum type options, right? It's going to be a guy who's significantly past their prime, right? But can maybe just do the things that you need them to do, right? The basic sort of things. I mean, I thought Lowry looked like he was still NBA functional in the playoffs last season when he was with Philly. He's 38. I don't think he's got a lot of athletic zip and pop or anything like that. He didn't have a ton to start with. But that makes a lot of sense to me, too. I think just a veteran player. I'm kind of, in general, with this draft, I'm looking at some of these point guards, but I think in the context of where this Wolves team is, a Monte Morris, a Kyle Lowry, that type of backup point guard makes more sense to me. I mean, this, right? Are you building yourself like you're a contender, Minnesota Timberwolves? If so, you probably take a more bankable thing at backup point guard, particularly because Conley's so old, too.
And with free agent point guards, and this guy, Spencer Dinwiddie plays multiple positions, but he's just all cooked, right? I mean, it's just all over for him, isn't it? It looked that way last year.
I mean, but it's still I think you got to lower the bar. I don't think Spencer Dinwiddie is going to be a minimum player.
Wow.
If the Wolves, people could not want Kyle Anderson and have frustration with that, or they could not be blown away by Monte Morris or Jordan McLaughlin, man. But keep in mind, given the second apron and the salary cap restrictions, the only thing you can do is minimum contracts. So what if that, that's like Austin Rivers of 2 years ago. We got to be thinking in that range. And Spencer Dinwiddie, I think, is even probably 2 tiers above that.
Wow.
Not that he's any great shakes himself, but this is the second apron stuff. This is what we're talking about. You can't do anything but get a minimum salary player.
Great point. And that's not Markelle Fultz, right? Despite the injuries and the fact that he can't shoot threes, he's not a minimum guy, is he?
No, man. I think we're going a lot lower. I mean, I think Lowry's probably the type of example of a 38-year-old, something like that, who's just maybe chasing a ring and can't get more than that elsewhere. But even then, maybe some team can offer him $4 million and the Wolves can only offer him $3 or whatever on the minimum. It's thin out there, dude.
The draft. Let me start here, and there's a podcast via at Dane Moore NBA where he chatted with somebody with really, I don't know if the takes are right because I don't watch college basketball much, but the guest you had on the rookies. So what's the guy's name? It's eluding me. Your most recent podcast,
Tyler Metcalf.
Yeah,
works with No Ceilings NBA.
Yeah, that guy does a good job. So maybe for the second round and pick 37. Do you like Houston's Jamal Shed, the college basketball defensive player of the year?
So yes, I don't pretend to be some sort of draft savant or anything like that, but I'm just going and watching a little bit of film on all these guys. I mean, I think of him more as the Jalen Clark sort of thing, right? Where it's this, bulldog defender type of player. That they drafted a year ago in Jalen Clark. So that one doesn't connect to me as much. I'm more thinking about a point guard, kind of like the bucket getting guy, rather than the defender. I think this team has actually been like kind of looking for a Jamal Crawford type of player, right? Since going back to Jalen Noel a couple of years ago, Finch has talked about that a bunch. He wants the guy that I think has a little bit more zip to the basket at the 1-2 combo guard type of position. And you do have the number one defense. So that guy doesn't, you know what I'm saying? Doesn't need to be an elite defender. I think at the 1 or at the 2, backup 2, they can kind of afford to get more of an all offense, no defense sort of guy, which is rare in the NBA, but you are the best defensive team in the league. So,
and now,
more of that than Shed.
So this is, this free agency piece is dreamy, and there's zero chance it'll happen. And I think he plays the same spot as Anthony Edwards, but OG Anunoby here. Now, granted, he gets hurt every day, but with that 3 and D on this team, holy cow, would OG Anunoby be good here? And I think Chris might have been with him in Toronto.
Yeah, I mean, how are you getting him? You're trading Cat?
Yeah, that's a good point. And plus, he declined the option, so I guess he becomes a free agent. Now, Minnesota's Cam Christie. Know anything about him and potentially him fitting here?
Yeah, I think that's a little bit more of the shooter kind of mold, as I understand that. And I think that'd be 37. I heard the other day that he did work out an interview with the Wolves. I mean, they're casting a wide net there, so I wouldn't say that puts him necessarily well ahead of anybody else in the group. But I mean, I think he's still only 18. Right? Is that right? He was super young last year with the Gophers. So, I mean, what are you thinking about that just in general for this draft? It's so weird where it's like you're going to draft like an 18, 19-year-old or a 23, 24-year-old.
Right.
It just seems like it's really evolving. How are you thinking about that?
Wow. Yeah, he's 18. He turns 19 July 24th. So, yeah, he's a month away from being 19. That's a good point. I'm.
Whereas Baylor Shireman is 24, and that's another player they could draft right there who's like a wing shooter out of Creighton. It just, I mean, I guess, right, if you want a more NBA ready now piece, this draft might have more of them with more 23, 24-year-olds coming out. I guess that's advantageous to the Wolves. Yeah,
I tend to lean the way you lean, simply because of the way the NBA has operated for so long, where when you're close, that you want to bolster it with veterans. And veterans that, like the Monte Morris piece, financially and everything makes sense here, because they are close. And what they did have last year when it was healthy clearly worked. So I'm with you on that, but still they have 27 and 37. So it's it's obviously an every other year situation with the Gobert trade. But the first part of that podcast you guys did, the first one I think you hit on was Isaiah Collier from USC, and but both you guys said some intriguing things about him, and potentially being here. For those who missed it, what can you share?
Yeah, well, he's just it's always hard this time of year because you're talking to different people all over the place. But that's just a name I've heard in connection to the Wolves in a handful of different places over the past couple weeks, So I go to Tyler, who's watched a lot more of them than I have and wanted to start there. So that's kind of where I'm starting from is, okay, who might be an option? I've heard Collier, I've heard Shireman, I've heard Terrence Shannon from Illinois. And so I think that's who we started the pod with. But Collier is an interesting one and kind of so representative of this draft being as bizarre as it was. Like, he's a guy who might actually just be there at 27. Yet a couple of months ago, he was a guy in the conversation for the number 1 overall pick, or certainly like a top 5 guy. Now, he went to USC, which was a disaster this season, as I understand it, in terms of how that whole team kind of functioned. And, he's 19, Isaiah Collier's 19 himself, and, didn't necessarily develop in the same way. But that kind of goes back to my point with them trading up for Leonard Miller or drafting Josh Minot 2 years ago, is like, that kind of seems to me, as I understand it, to be the type of player that this front office,
right?
They don't get swept up in the narrative necessarily changing on a player if they still believe in the skill set, or like they can kind of remove, if they can remove Collier from that USC context that was dysfunctional and see him just as a player, maybe in a workout. I think that matters. Like Leonard Miller played for the G League Ignite and they drafted him out of there. That's a super weird context to be playing. And Josh Minot was in Memphis 2 years ago playing for Penny Hardaway and that whole kind of mess, and like hardly played it all there. So I think that's what this front office, I mean, they haven't said this to me specifically, but that to me is a pretty strong pattern of behavior. They go, I think a lot of these guys are getting lost in the context of the mess of what the NCAA and just being a young 19, 20-year-old is coming up to the league now. And they're removing that and just kind of focusing on the person and the basketball player rather than the stats. And that makes a lot of sense to me, man. Like that really feels like a place to get value.
So do you absolutely sense or just sense the core with Edwards, Karl Anthony Towns, McDaniels, and Gobert will stay intact? Is that the take or the absolute take?
It's the take. Yeah, I don't think. I mean, and this is also just part of like where the league is now. I mean, look what happened last night with the Mikal Bridges thing.
Wow.
Like,
how about
this
that?
league is constantly going to be shaking up from a who has assets, what is available to them, what do they need standpoint. I don't think it's us like hating on Karl or anything like that, or not giving him his respect, or do flowers for what he did last season and in the playoffs. But Karl Anthony Towns is always a question to get traded at any time over these 4 years he's on the Supermax contract. That's just fair. That's what the contract is. This is a team, grappling for contention, and that's a move that they could make. So is it likely to happen? No. Have I heard that is he's actively being shopped or anything like that? No. But last summer, there was real talks about trading Karl. He obviously just had a great year, and so maybe that diminishes it. But I don't think with the level of team that the Timberwolves are, we should be thinking about them in any sort of absolutes of running it back. This front office will make moves, not just if it's Cat. I mean, Jade McDaniels, Naz Reid, whatever. Like, I don't think there's always so much fewer untouchable players on any roster than we normally give it credit for. And when you're here at this point with this salary cap situation, I think everything's on the table at all times, other than Anthony Edwards.
I'm glad you brought up the Mikal Bridges trade from the Nets over to the Knicks, and it's fascinating because Bridges reunites with DiVincenzo, Hart, and Brunson, so they got that nice Villanova squad back together, or they're getting it back together, and the Nets get at least 4 unprotected first-round picks and the skeletal remains of Bojan Bogdanovic. And so I'm listening to NBA radio this morning, driving into work, to hear what they had to say about the draft. And they were all over the 2025 draft and tying it together to the Nets with some assumed tanking. Mm-hmm. And they mentioned this kid, Cooper Flagg, who plays at Duke, and basically made him sound like a cross between Andrei Kirilenko and Scottie Pippen. And then they're talking about this Ace Bailey cat, and there was a Tracy McGrady comparison there. And you had a guy, I think his last name's Edgecombe. I mean, they were just talking about the depth of like 4, 5, or 6 next year, and the Nets are kind of angling for that. Well, if that's the case, they're not going to be the only team angling for things like that. So, I mean, this could be a wild night tonight.
Oh, yeah. No, I think for sure. We're in one of those weird times where this is a terrible draft at the top and the subsequent year is awesome. as I understand it. So that sets up a whole bunch of stuff and movement for not only next season, but now Brooklyn's tanking, right? Like just like that, boom, they go from maybe a team that could add one piece or something and contend to be a low end playoff team in the East. Boom, they're going to have like one of the worst records in the league, probably, right?
Yeah.
And it just moves like that, and a lot of it does have to do with, what resurrected the Timberwolves, man?
Yep.
Getting Anthony Edwards. Like it sucks. Minnesota fans know that more than anyone, that it's hard to wait around and tank year after year and try your hand at Derek Williams and Wes Johnson and whoever. But if you get your Ant, right? If you get your Luka Doncic, even if you get your Cade Cunningham, right? You're at least back on a path of moving in the right direction. So yeah, it's going to get really like bifurcated here in the league, where the bottom teams are going to be the bottom teams, as we kind of saw this year as well. The Mikal Bridges trade, I think the Wolves, I got a Wolves angle on that I think is interesting.
What?
If Bridges got traded for that and Bridges was traded plus 5 first-round picks, that's the same contract. He's on the same value of contract as Jaden McDaniels is. And, there's kind of some hand-wringing over the course of the season of how much did Jaden get paid? To me, I think that trade last night kind of cleared up that Jaden McDaniels, Mikal Bridges is better than Jaden McDaniels right now, but that Jaden McDaniels contract is just fine. If Bridges is worth 5 first-round picks on top of his deal and he makes the same money as Jaden does, that contract's just fine.
Box.
You can't mention Derek Williams and Wesley Johnson without including
Duty Eby.
Now we got to go back far for that, but I just like hearing David Stern say it.
Duty Eby.
All right. In closing, just quick 15-second recaps here. Okay, Karl Anthony Towns and what you think should be next.
Well, what do you mean by?
No, I'm talking.
What do I think should be next from Karl Anthony Towns?
I'm talking about with his game.
Yeah, man. Let's evolve into an absolute dagger of a weapon on the perimeter, and let's let go of some of the attacking game. It's never going to be all shooting 12 threes and only 2 twos in a game. Obviously, he's got off the bounce game and on the interior, but let's weaponize Cat on the perimeter and let that make this offense not be terrible again next season. That is the path to me. This team was 17th on offense. That's ridiculous. That's unacceptable. And I think that can be totally fixed with using Karl Anthony Towns differently. Anthony Edwards playing better with him in tandem. How about a pick and pop? Can we please see that next season and no more of those drives, but get those out of here.
Rudy Gobert.
I thought the Denver series was really instructive that he's, particularly in a playoff context, is going to be left wide open in the middle of the floor off of the screen, right? And he's catching there at 8 feet. I need Rudy to add a scoring option from that range next season. Remember in that Denver series, they found him in the middle. He's spraying it out to Nikhil in the corner. I think Rudy became a good short roll passer. I need Rudy to be able to catch right there, look at the basket, and do a push shot that's 7 feet away. I know people say all the time that 31 years old, you can't add something. You can get in the gym and you can hammer that all off season, and you can be able to catch that on the roll, turn to the basket, and make a 7-foot shot. He's a 70% free throw shooter. It's half the distance. We could figure that one out there. I want offense out of Rudy too. I want offense out of everybody on the team. Again, good defensive team, bad offensive team.
You are my man.
Duty Eby.
Enjoy the draft this evening, and we'll follow you closely at Dane Moore NBA, and we'll listen to the recap podcast somewhere later this week. It's the Dane Moore NBA podcast. Find it at Dane Moore NBA. I appreciate you greatly, man. Enjoy the evening.
Thanks, PF. Talk to you soon.
Yep, see you, bud. Dane Moore. That's an elite NBA mind right there, part of the Timber Tech What's on Deck set list. Speaking of drafts, the Minnesota Wild draft from Las Vegas beginning Friday night. Bill Guerin, their general manager, joins us at about 10:35, an hour and change from now. Nordo produces, and I'm Paul Allen. Good morning. It's a beautiful morning in the neighborhood, and this is 9 to noon.
Vikes Bites.
Vikes Bites. Vikes Bites. Brought to you by Thousand Hills Lifetime Grazed Grass-Fed Beef. You can shop online, thousandhillslifetimegrazed.com. You can find elite grass-fed beef products at local Coburns, local co-op locations as well. And they support Dinkytown athletes. They're trying to keep not only the product local, the company local, Clearwater, Minnesota, but keeping elite athletes local as well.
You're quite excited for the 947, aren't you?
I am, yeah.
Proclaiming to me when I first saw you this morning, when it comes to selling yours truly in the audience on 5 names for the Wolves at 27, Nordo told me he has the answer to the test.
I do.
So it's one of these 5.
Yeah.
Which I bet you it's going to be, because I just like the way you're confidently feeling that vibe. I like that.
I wouldn't even watch the draft, to be honest with you.
Really?
I would just listen to this segment, write those 5 names down, and then tomorrow when you tune into 9 to noon, you'll hear us talking about one of those 5 names now being a member of the Wolves. That's how, you know how I break this down. I'm on Ken Palm. I'm all over the place.
Yeah.
You know I love college basketball. It's been a passion of mine for years.
Yeah.
And you're almost exhausted by how often I talk to you about Tuesday night action and all these various games. Big Northern Kentucky fan. You know all about all of that.
100%.
And I'm excited to share my intel with the crowd.
That's why when I shared with Dane Moore, you know, what the Nets are doing here by getting these 5 first-round draft picks, 4 unprotected, is they're circling the wagons for a player named Cooper Flagg, who's going to go first in the draft next year. And you were like, you're preaching to the crowd now. We've known about Cooper Flagg for the last 6 years. I'm like, who's we? Me and K-Palm and, you know, elite college basketball minds. I'm like, okay.
Well, how about you pulling something out of the backside with the McCall Bridges Villanova reference?
Oh, wow. Yeah, we threw caution to the wind with that one. Then I had an anxiety attack while Dane was talking, got into the talk back in the microphone and said, please tell me Bridges went to Villanova and not UConn, and I didn't just mess up that Villanova covenant they're putting together with Brunson, Kahn's guy, DiVincenzo, and Josh Hart. But I think we got lucky.
Well, the whole thing with Bridges, too, we've had this conversation a couple of different times. You see certain franchises, and Dane was talking about it from a draft standpoint. I know this is Vikes Bites. Thank you, Thousand Hills, but where you can turn an entire franchise around with an elite pick. Anthony Edwards, proof of that here. Yep. Other first overall picks proving the other way. So make or break situations. But teams trying to jumpstart their franchises with McCall Bridges, who's a super cool, super good, productive player, but not a patriarch of an NBA team that has any chance of winning.
Agreed.
I mean, how much better? And with OG Anunoby, I think he opted out of his contract, so he's going to be out into the beyond this summer, a free agent candidate.
Yeah, no, that's a dog right there. Somebody's going to get a dog if he stays healthy.
But are you kidding me with Bridges and Brunson? Like, that's one of the more badass backcourts in the NBA. The way, and so going back to like the way we would fawn over Luka and Kyrie, and now our hopes potentially. How do the Wolves get better? Trade Cat for Trae Young. You know, those sorts of conversations about building elite tandems and duos and backcourts. That's awesome for the Knicks. Mm-hmm. But I could have told you this 3 years ago that this was eventually going to end in tragedy.
Yeah.
As soon as they decided that they were going to move forward post Durant, Ben Simmons hasn't played a game in like 5 years, and Kyrie leaves, of course.
Yep.
That was a disaster waiting to happen. But now they have these picks. And so people in the NBA, it's such a weird, you're either where the Celtics are or you're in the culture of next year's draft.
Yeah.
What does 2026 look like? You're playing that future game, and for Wolves fans forever, this was the most exciting time of the year with free agency. Who can we get? We're dream weaving. We're playing fantasy hoops, building a roster and what a starting 5 looks like.
Yeah.
And now we're in the process of talking about who the Wolves will pick at 27. And it's a very different arena that we have found ourselves in this time around with the NBA offseason.
All right, to land the plane on this, the talkback machine is open for you at the free iHeartRadio app. Find the microphone, leave us 30 seconds on who you think the Timberwolves should draft tonight or what they should do tonight at 27. And we definitely will play some back. We have multiple openings today, 9 to noon. We're going to get into Nordo's 5 for Fighting and the Wolves at 27 coming up around the corner. But fire those talkbacks away, and Nordo will get them squared away, and we'll sprinkle some in during the course of the show on your Western Conference Finals team, the Minnesota Timberwolves, and tonight at 27 or tomorrow at 37. Free iHeartRadio app, Talkback Now.
I'm so giving, by the way. I actually have 6. I have a 6-pack. Yeah, well, I don't have a 6-pack, but you understand where I'm going with this.
I haven't felt my ribs in 30 years.
Vikes Bites! So, this is Vikings related only in the fact that it's in the NFC North. So, Vikes Bites, thank you again, Thousand Hills.
Yeah.
I saw this, I think it was Judy Batista, NFL.com, did a bid on dark horse MVP candidates, and a couple of names they popped out at me.
Darnold?
Well, you have, of course, so I have the MVP odds here. Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, CJ Stroud. Those are your top 3.
Mm-hmm.
Then it's Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, and I'm going to ask you if you think you know, NFC North, who the 6th player is in odds to be the MVP of the 2024 NFL season.
Okay, and I'm so sorry. Mahomes, Burrow.
Allen, Stroud, Burrow, Lamar, the usual suspects.
Jordan Love. Yeah! Well, the only reason I said it is because Goff isn't flashy enough. Darnold hasn't played in a year and change. And Caleb Williams is a rookie.
Correct.
And it's always a quarterback. So, I just kind of deduce.
Caleb Williams, 75-1, by the way.
Yeah. And by the way, anybody who wants to run that Jordan Love MVP money, like through the windows, 1500 or 15 or 1600 Utica Avenue South. We'll meet you next to the piano. We'll get acquainted with the accomplished pianist, Sir Leonard Dykert, and we'll take your money for the next 3 weeks and won't be paying you any back.
Hey, all those times, I think it's happened twice or 3 times now where you've offered to bring a duffel bag with $10,000 in it and drive to the Wisconsin border. Has anyone actually reached out to you?
No.
To take you up on that?
The Packers.com thing, who got my number somehow and called me a liar, never texted or called me back. I can't remember what the other one was, but no, that never has happened.
Well, it's a long drive.
My man said, and I'm not going to say, I've never said his name, but my man said that draft morning with Charge Lieber and you, when I got elite steam that Aaron Rodgers was going to cause an awful offseason for everything that is Green Bay Packers football.
It was going south.
And that he wanted to be traded to San Francisco. It was elite 10 of 10 steam. My man called me and left me and I picked it up and called me a liar. And I'm like, what? You just said what? Well, that's when let's just stop having this conversation, okay? Where do you live? And he told me. And I said, cool. I'm going to find $10,000 and put it in a duffel bag. And I'd like you to do the same. And then let's meet in Hudson. And then I'm going to show you these text messages. And you know what? That's probably going to ruin a relationship for me. But I'm going to shut you down from calling anybody a liar ever again. And I'm going to take your money. And he never called me back.
Hudson, cool lunch spot, by the way.
What does that mean?
Would have been worth the drive. Yeah.
Well, I would have kept going to Turtle Lake.
Oh, absolutely.
Somehow, some way. Check out the con spot.
The Book at Turtle Lake.
There it is.
At St. Croix Casino, Turtle Lake.
Oh, that was
6th in MVP voting, and this is via Judy Batista.
Mm-hmm.
Love's ascension in 2023 amid the Packers' second half and playoff performance makes him and his team early darlings for the 2024 season. The reason that I put this into context is it was kind of shocking to me, PA, that Jordan Love was 6th in MVP odds, 14-1. Jared Goff, 35-1. So when I read Judy Batista's bit and I went to FanDuel and found the odds, I was kind of shocked and almost offended at the idea that Jared Goff would be lower on the MVP odds list.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Than Jordan Love.
I'm glad you said it.
And best of luck to Jordan Love. Yeah. But Jared Goff, from just a talent standpoint, from a weapons standpoint, everything points to Goff having, I hate to say this, rooting for my purple, obviously, by far the best quarterback in the NFC North is in the Motor City.
Yeah.
best of luck to Jordan Love. Hope they get that run game or keep that run game going for him.
Yeah.
But Goff shouldn't even really be a dark horse. He should be top 5 or 6 potential if everything plays the way that Ben Johnson returning and all of those things come into the equation. That if it goes the way Kitties fans want, that's where Jared Goff should be, right?
Shockingly, I have a tentacle and or diatribe that involves minimal of what you just said, but I don't want to forget it. You mentioned in the MVP favoritism list.
Yeah.
You mentioned Lamar Jackson.
14-1, yes.
Let's let's not forget they have Derrick Henry.
They do have Derrick Henry.
I mean, that just makes me laugh that team running the way they run, playing the way they play, now has Derrick Henry. I mean, a joint practice against the Ravens, would be super sweet. But we got, middle of August, we have Cleveland and Chick Nubb and Deshaun Watson and Amari Cooper and Myles Garrett. Hannah Elizabeth.
Yeah.
Hey, how's she doing?
Oh, she's fantastic.
Well, that's great. Good to hear. She going to keep you from going to Cleveland?
At this, we haven't had that conversation yet, but everything's moving pretty smoothly.
Yeah. That's.
I'm optimistic about August.
I've only been to a joint practice on the road one time, and it was with you
in Cincinnati.
Sweatfest in Cincinnati. Oh. Well, that thing was the bomb.
Yeah.
Ain't
no sunshine.
Yeah. It was spearfish or extra. Somebody hooked us up with the pass of all passes ever to pass. And after the show, they were practicing.
Those were the old days.
And I'm between Michael Johnson, Damata Pecco or something, this tree king something, watching a younger Adam Thielen and Pac-Man Jones almost fight.
Oh, it was amazing.
That thing was elite.
No, it was an all-time moment. Pac-Man Jones, you're just another bleeping white receiver type of thing. And Adam just coming right back at him and both teams. That was
Adam
one of the funnest moments that I've had just being close to the Vikings.
It was great.
No, that was sweet.
All right, now those are Vikes Bites. Provided by Fan. Who has it?
Yeah, it's Thousand Hills Lifetime Grazed Grass-Fed Beef.
Coming up around the corner, Nordo is going to sell me/us on 5 or 6 names for the Timberwolves at 27, and we will whittle them down. And leave some talkbacks at the free iHeartRadio app, and we'll get your thoughts too with round 1 of the NBA draft this evening. Round 1 of the NHL draft is Friday. Billy G, general manager for the Minnesota Wild. Bill Guerin joins 9 to noon, about 10:35.
With the 27th pick in the 2024 NBA draft, I haven't slept, to be honest with you. I've been so excited for this segment because I have the answer key. Ladies and gentlemen, listening to 9 to noon on a Wednesday, it is NBA draft day. And the NBA draft trying to capture the vibe and the captivation of the fan base for multiple days now. You love the second round of the NBA so much. You've been pining for it for years. You're like, it needs its own night. It needs its own evening. So tonight, just the first round. Tomorrow night, the second round. And we'll react to what happens this evening, of course, and then look forward to round 2 of things. I believe the Wolves have picks 27 and 37 in this edition of the NBA draft. We're not in the lottery. That feels kind of weird, right? And this trend with Coach Finch and company putting this team in the playoffs every year, certainly positive. But I have a total of 6 names here, PA. And these, to be honest with you, these just look like guys that could be around in the 20s that shoot the ball, provide some offense, and potentially a potential future plan at the point guard spot. So, are you ready for the answer key, Mr. Allen? Are you ready for all the names? Make sure to write them down now. You got a pen over there. Stop chewing on it.
And
my first guy, several of these were actually mentioned with Dane Moore, elite NBA mind, who opened the show with PA earlier in the 9 o'clock hour. My first guy off the board for the Wolves potentially is a 6'4" guard out of USC, just finishing his freshman season. It's Isaiah Collier, Atlanta native, and his comparisons I went to NBADraft.net, and I'm sure you've been there as well, PA. His comparisons, PA, Jeff Teague and Eric Bledsoe. Bledsoe had some good years before he kind of languished in Milwaukee.
Yeah.
But Collier, 6'5", chiseled, NBA-ready frame on the perimeter, PA. Great speed, body control, and burst. He's a physical and sturdy guard who seeks contact and has the strength to steamroll matchups on his way to the rim. His scoring line, 16 and nearly 5 as a freshman at USC. Powerful first step. Nice ball handling ability. Either hand, by the way. Ooh, versatile. Make him tough to contain, allow him to turn corners and pressure the rim. Picture him with those those offhand floaters like Kyrie. Does Kyrie have an offhand? Does Isaiah Collier have an offhand? He looks really good in transition, consistently keeping guys on their heels in the open floor. He gets to the basket. And that's the key, as you were talking about, PA, and you're going to get a theme with some of these players that I'm going to mention to you. Again, you don't even have to watch the draft tonight. This is the answer key. One of these 6 people, I'm feeling it, are going to be a member of the Wolves. But the offense, and at times the inability to score points, and as good and as sturdy and as stable as Mike Conley has been, there was a little bit of a black hole, you could say, in terms of scoring the basketball at that spot when he's on the court. This is a kid that projects to be a potential scorer in the NBA. Isaiah Collier is the first name on my list. Would you like an Eric Bledsoe or a Jeff Teague type out of tonight's draft, PA? Would you be open to that?
Yes. More so Teague than Bledsoe. Now, Eric, when he was at Kentucky, I mean, he was the dog of all dogs ever to dog. Maybe injuries caught up with him a little bit in the NBA. But I remember when Jeff was here. I mean, Jeff, he's just super tough guy. Very, very tough guy. Slithery, sneaky with his 3-point shot. Yeah, I'd take that for sure. The A topic for me with Collier is with what Dane Moore said, because he's much more plugged in than am I when it comes to the NBA. The USC situation, unsurprisingly, now that I think about it, seemed to have a little distraction factor to it, a little friction to it.
Yeah.
There was
maybe some animosity.
Yeah, some
dissension, some negativity.
Just chaos within the Covenant. That's where Bronny James played, right?
Bronny James, yes.
Yeah, so I'm starting to figure this whole thing out. But see, I like situations like that. I like in the claiming game in horse racing, when you're claiming a horse from a very low percentage training outfit, the age-old adage is you're taking that animal from a motel and putting him in a hotel. Here's another great one. The racetrack is the only place, copyright Milton Berle. The racetrack is the only place the windows wash the people.
I always love that one.
But if you pull Collier out of the motel, Holiday Inn, and you put him in the hotel with the right kind of players as a backup to the veteran Mike Conley, I'm not mad at that situation. And maybe that's part of the names with the free iHeartRadio talkback, where you can offer up your thoughts on what you want the Wolves to do tonight and or tomorrow. And we have more names to sell around the corner at FM 100.3 KFAN.